Hi there, Alan Perlman from UAV Coach and Drone Pilot Ground School here. Today is a special day. It's our company's 5-year anniversary. And to think that I would be sitting here 5 years after I crashed a DJI Phantom 1 into a parked car in the middle of New York City nonetheless, it's been quite a road since that first incident. Now, back then, there was very little information about drones online. I had a very hard time figuring out what the rules were, how to fly these systems safely. I think the Phantom 2 had just come out. It was late 2014. And I set out on a journey to try and answer some of these questions I had for myself. And candidly, I bought the domain name UAVcoach.com because Drone Coach was already taken, and a handful of other permutations that I was interested in were taken. So I also thought the UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle, would possibly help us to sound more professional. So since then, it's been a roller coaster of triumph and trial and tribulation. And I'm so proud of the work that our team has done to build one of the leading drone training and education companies in the industry. I like to joke that when we committed to doing a weekly newsletter every Saturday morning a few years ago, I was worried that we wouldn't have enough to write about, or that the industry would slow down, and how would we keep churning out content week after week. Little did I know how wrong I would be. So prelude aside, we put this video together because I've been doing a lot of reflecting and talking with our team, and I wanted to share 5 insights, 5 lessons that we have picked up being in the drone industry for the last 5 years, and I hope you find them helpful. And without further ado, let's jump in. Number 1, betting big doesn't always work out. I want to pay tribute to a few companies that have raised massive amounts of venture capital funding that just couldn't figure it out. So Airware, a drone software company, they raised $118 million, no longer exist. Sci-Fi Works, a really cool tethered drone company, they raised $39 million. They tried rebranding, no longer exist as of, I think, early 2019. 3D Robotics, a drone hardware company. They had the 3DR Solo drone, really great to fly. They raised $179 million to take on juggernaut DJI, and they no longer sell drones. They're still in the industry. They're a software company. They pivoted, but they're likely not performing nearly at the expectation of investors when they set out on this vision of being a leading drone hardware manufacturer. Aerobotics, an Israeli company, they raised $100 million, and just last week I saw that they laid off 150 or 200 employees. And you know, other companies like Parrot, a French drone manufacturer, they didn't necessarily raise massive amounts of capital, but they've had to pare down their line of drones quite a bit. GoPro, right? They had their Karma drone that couldn't stack up with the Mavic. It was a botched product launch and just poor execution from their team. And they no longer make drones. They let go 200 or so employees with that as well. So it's been a fascinating thing to watch. You know, I imagine it's not uncommon in other fast evolving dynamic industries to see a massive injection of capital in a very short amount of time. But we've been so close to it. We've really felt the rise and fall of these companies. And I'm fascinated to see what happens to other companies that have raised money that are still chugging along. Precision Hawk, Skydio, Drone Deploy, Zipline, D-Drone. You know, these are companies that have raised millions and millions of dollars, and we'll be curious to see, you know, if in the next 5 years, right, when we're shooting our 10-year anniversary video, hopefully, then yeah, we'll check back in and see how these companies have panned out. Number 2, drones are doing good. So what I mean by that is I'm all for capitalism. I love that there are folks out there making money flying their drone, either as an individual kind of dronepreneur or working for their construction company or insurance company. Capitalism is great. What's even better is when lives are being saved. And that is what is happening more and more and more with drones. We work with a lot of police and fire departments that are using drones for search and rescue purposes. Drones are being used to save lost hikers. They're being used to help lifeguards better monitor shark activity. AT&T used drones to restore communications after Hurricane Michael in Puerto Rico. Drones were used after the earthquakes in Nepal. They're doing a lot of good, and sometimes we get lost in all the money that's being raised. But at the end of the day, this is really cool technology that's being used to directly save lives. And I only shared a few small examples, but it's not necessarily something I expected. Candidly, when I got into this industry, I was thinking about drones as a filmmaking tool. Somebody had mentioned something about inspections and land surveys, and I thought, oh, that's cool. But this little flying camera, I never thought that they would be used in the way that they're being used as far as public safety and emergency response. So big thumbs up to humans for figuring out how to leverage these systems for good. Number 3, the drone industry is a lot of industries. So when you look at who is flying drones, you come from a wide variety of industries. So when we ran our 2019 drone industry survey, we asked 1,389 of our drone pilot ground school students some questions. So these are folks who are going through the FAA's commercial drone certification process, where they've already gone through it. We asked them, what models are you flying? What industries are you in? The number 1 industry answer is construction. Some close seconds and thirds, energy and utilities, filmmaking, insurance, agriculture, real estate. Just to talk about filmmaking for an example, helicopters are no longer being used. Drones are cheaper, they're safer, they're faster to deploy, and they're a lot more flexible. Telecommunications towers, windmills, solar panels, they're getting inspected. Construction companies, real estate development firms, they want progress monitoring shots. They want volumetric calculations of how much dirt is over here and how much of this material is over here. There's a lot of mining and aggregate companies using drones for that kind of information. Insurance adjusters, they're no longer taking a roof, throwing it up against a house, and did I say taking a roof? Taking a ladder, throwing it up against a house, and climbing onto the roof. I've spoken with, I want to say at least 10. I was going to say dozens, but I'd say at least 10 folks over the last 3 years who have been injured on the job doing some kind of roof inspection, and now they're using drones. Agriculture, farmers are using drones to get much more timely and accurate data about the health of their crops. Real estate brokers and agents and property managers and asphalt repair companies and car dealerships, they're using drones to market their properties, their location. So drones are being used in a lot of different industries, and again, similar to drones doing good, this isn't necessarily something I would have thought about 5 years ago. It's been fascinating to learn about these use cases, to get exposed to different kinds of industries, to talk to police officers who are doing crime scene incident mapping, and fire departments using drones to monitor fires, and learning about how they monitor fires and how they're deploying drones. I'm a little long-winded here, but you can tell that I'm very excited about not the drone industry, but drones in general. I think they're just continuing to permeate various industries, so I wanted to highlight that. Number 4, respect the regulations, or I should say respect the regulatory process. I think it's fascinating how regulations are drafted, sent out to the public, and then ultimately enacted and enforced. So we've been really close to that process over the last few years. Originally we had the 333 exemption back in 2014, where you had to submit 50, 60 pages of paperwork to the FAA, hear back 6 or 7 months later with a thumbs up or thumbs down, and even if you got a thumbs up, you had to have a manned aircraft pilot flying the drone. So that was an interesting sort of culture of non-compliance back then. But at the time, we were offering 333 exemption filing services. We were very close to that process. And then when the Part 107 regulations came out, seeing the NPRM, the Notice for Proposed Rulemaking, get sent out in February of 2015, and then a year and some change later, after the public was allowed to comment on the NPRM, the FAA responded to each public comment. I think it was a 200 or 300 page document. It was some riveting reading back in 2016. And then in June, they announced the regulations, and in late August, they rolled them out. of 2016. And then since then, just seeing Lance and the automated authorization process roll out, and how the FAA is doing these public and private partnerships, and how there are draft rules at play now for other exciting things, like being able to fly over people or fly at night without a waiver, remote ID. So it's not something I necessarily would have thought I'd be geeking out about 5 years ago, but I do really much respect the regulatory process, and we've gone from something that didn't make sense at all, the 333 exemption, to a much more streamlined set of rules and regulations. And we still have a long way to go, but we're absolutely trending in the right direction. I think it's challenging. Imagine you're working at the Federal Aviation Administration, and seemingly overnight, you've got tens of thousands of people in 2014 and early 2015 buying drones from Amazon.com, and they're basically buying aircraft that are being sent to their homes less than 48 hours later if you're a Prime member, next day or whatever. How do you regulate that? It's the first time in aviation history that you've got folks that can bring aircraft up into the air. And these are not model aircraft, right? They're different. The culture around model aircraft is different. You've got guys who tinker and build and really understand, how to fly in a confined area. Whereas with drones, you've got people landing their drone on the White House lawn, at 2 a.m. I remember that story and thought it would shut the entire industry down, right? So it's been fascinating to see regulations get pushed and enforced, and I suspect we'll continue to see a lot more of that over the coming years. And number 5, being in an industry like this is likely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I think it's just important to acknowledge that. I feel so blessed and grateful and humbled to have worked with you all over the last 5 years to help push this industry forward. If you've made it this far in the video, you're likely very passionate about or already actively involved in the drone industry. And hopefully you recognize what a precious opportunity we all have to continue to fly safely and responsibly and to push this industry forward. So with that said, thank you again. Happy 5 years to our team, to you all who have been in the industry and who are pushing this forward, and blue skies and safe flying out there.